Hey, John Gilroy here. A lot of people today are talking about agentic AI and artificial intelligence. Time for a deep dive from GitLab. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. In the virtual studio today is Joel Krooswick, Federal CTO from GitLab. Joel, how are you?
It is great to be back with you, John.
Are you a real human or just artificial intelligence? What do I have here on the screen? Is it a real human being or not?
It is me today. Actually, yes, you got the real thing today.
I guess that's a question we have to ask always in the future. Is this it real or is it tape? This is a critical question.
Yeah, it really is.
Many of my listeners are, pick up your phone, you read the news, artificial intelligence impacting everything, impacting software development. All this AI comes in with agentic AI, and GitLab has got a very solid reputation in the industry for helping people maybe sift through some of the noise and improve their software development in this process. So let's start off with defining some terms before we get into the argument. So agentic AI, what does it mean and how is it going to impact my federal audience?
Yeah, I think that's a great place for us to start because everybody's talking about the agents. The agents are coming, right? Like it's that time. Here we are. What is that? Well, the reality is today, most of what we're doing is with AI assistance. We poke the assistant and say, hey, I need something. The agents come along and say, I can help you with a specific task and I can do it really, really well. And they're kind of an always on, a little more proactive kind of thing. But I think of them as a unitasker, right? If you think about your kitchen, you've got these unitaskers. What's a toaster do? Makes toast, right? And an agent's kind of like that. It goes out and it does one particular thing exceptionally well. If you put a bunch of agents together, then you get a more effective kitchen, right? So that's kind of the way I look at agents today. But they are the more proactive, right? They're the things that are getting things done for us. And we don't necessarily have to ask them for everything. They may see something we don't and just go do it.
So the way this fits into the discussion about securing software development with GitLab is that agents can be used to review code and find malicious activity or problems in it, huh?
Absolutely. Actually, there's a lot of different things that agents are doing today from, hey, go create this code for me. I need it to do X, Y, and Z. To go refactor this code for me because I can't find a developer doing Ada anymore. I got to find somebody who can help me out here. Let's get this thing into a Java environment where we can work on it. Or it looks and it sees, hey, there's been a change. There's a new vulnerability that came in my environment. Let me go ahead and spin up the fix for you, and I'll let you know when it's ready for your review. So agents are doing some really cool things today already.
I think listeners with gray hair may understand Ada, but some don't. But there are old programming languages that are still being used in the federal government. And the issue is here, okay, we have legacy systems. We know that. And so how, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, you'd have to find someone who's got, COBOL experience. But today, you can use an agent, and agentic AI can help you understand what did they mean. And there's all kinds of studies. We found 2,000 lines of code that mean nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the point of all this, right? Is when I drop a name like that and people say, well, what is that? How in the world are we supposed to maintain that system, right? It's 50, 60 years old potentially, and it's still running.
So the end of the world is AI. They're going to do everything. They cut your lawn. They're going to make dinner. They're going to do everything. Go to the dry cleaners. I mean, this is the answer, Joel. So there's some people who are kicking back on this. If you are sentient and see what's going on in the business, there's all kinds of reports of AI doing this, AI doing that. However, there are maybe some mature people who've seen some fights and are saying, well, let's draw the line here. Stan, for example, has written articles about, okay, AI and agentic AI is fine, but let's call Joel first and see what he has to say. So there's some caveats here, aren't there?
Well, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of fear, but there's also a lot of benefit. And I think we have to look between those areas to try to find where we fit. So what I look at when I'm staring down AI, I'm looking at where does it fit today? Where will it fit tomorrow? And what is the impact to me? Now, if you look across the news, you're going to see everything from, oh my goodness, it's going to replace all of our jobs, or why is it doing the work that I like to do while freeing me up to do the dishes, right? Why can't it just do my dishes for me? You're seeing those kind of arguments, but there's also people saying, you know what, this is finally going to let me get rid of some of these projects that have been nagging me. We're going to get something done that we've been just talking about for the last decade. And those opportunities are opening up. So the question becomes, what is happening with AI as an impact to the marketplace? And the reality is it is all over the place. But what we're looking at as the primary impact is those tasks that are more nuisance task or repetitive task or things where it's a pretty common task, right? Things that most of us are able to do. We're just used to doing it. Like if I'm a software developer, I have to spin up my own project potentially and my own infrastructure and all that. If AI does that for me, I can focus on the coding. Well, wait a minute. AI is doing a bunch of the coding for me too. What am I going to do? Well, it does a lot of the coding, but it doesn't do all of it. It leaves room for us to do the challenging work, which if you're like me, engineer, I came into this world looking for a challenge. That's why I'm in the tech space. I love that stuff. So to me, that lights me up a little bit. I'll get to work on more things that I want to work on. And then also it lets me be creative and innovative. So no longer am I tied to the script of I'm going to be doing the same things over and over and I just have to meet my release date and get this thing out of here. That still exists, but it should open the doors for some more innovative and creative work, things that we love the idea of but never get to do. So I think the evolution of the space is occurring, and there's going to be just a whole lot of new doors opening over the next year.
So, Joel, people in my community, if you talk about Stanford, we got to talk about Carnegie Mellon too, because a lot of smart software folks there. And if you read what Greg Tuhill says from Carnegie Mellon, he said, hey, maybe it isn't artificial intelligence, maybe it's augmented intelligence. Well, maybe that's the right way of looking at it. It's like, okay, so Joel has a push lawnmower. Then for Christmas, I get him a power lawnmower. It's the same grass he has. Now he has, half hour extra. Well, now he gets a chance to fix the back door or something. So it's I like that. It's really augmented because there's got to be a human involved.
And that is the way that GitLab looks at it. We're very explicit in saying we want to augment, not replace developers. We say those words specifically in the marketplace because we see it that way. And as somebody who's moved from the old classic push mower to the new self-propelled electric lawnmower, I can tell you, I really do like that new space. It's a lot quieter and it seems to get the job done well. So
in academia, software development, you got to talk about Carnegie Mellon and Stanford. We know the kind of leaders in there. And in the federal government, you have to talk about FedRAMP. And all your solutions are fine and dandy for most people, but in the federal government, you have to have that little badge there. So, and that's what GitLab does.
Yeah, we're actually watching closely at the moment. While FedRAMP's being retooled and reinvented and sped up, it's bringing into question a lot more. What other compliance frameworks are we going to have to deal with? How are we going to get there faster, right? There's the AI Swift tools RFI that's out right now. There's all these different DoD RFIs that we're looking at. All of them basically say, how do we do this better, faster, with more automation? And AI can help us get there by confirming that we're on track more real time during our development processes, so we don't get to the end and say, ooh, we're surprised, right? Get the clipboard out and I got a bunch of red X's on it. Those days can go away. We're all good with that day going away.
And the balance is, if you talk about football players, you got to be 300 pounds, but you got to be able to jump and be fast. Now, with software development, you need to innovate and have new software developed rapidly, but there's the compliance. So it's the yin yang in sports and yin yang in software development.
Absolutely right. Yeah, the conversation has shifted from one of get that code out there, make sure it looks good, make sure it's quality code, to let's make sure it's really secure. In fact, let's put a framework around it for compliance and make sure it adheres to that properly. We'll have policies as code and all these other things to confirm it as we go. That shift is turning compliance frameworks and compliance adherence on its head, making it more of a real-time effort. And so we're tackling multiple fronts at once. The developer role, where we've pushed a lot of things left, right, quote unquote, on top of them for years. We're now automating some of that back out so you can get back to doing the things that you love. And I think that's a really important piece of this, so that compliance isn't the next thing that just lands on the developer's pile of work to do without an assistant to help them.
So, Joel, there used to be a phrase called killer app. Oh, this is the killer app. That's the killer app. And let me tell you what I think the killer app is for you. I think the killer app is not artificial intelligence or agentic AI. I think the killer app is face-to-face human being experiences. Because you may hear Joel on this podcast and then go, well, I have something maybe sensitive. I don't want to put an email. I want to grab him and ask him about. And I think the killer app for this world is going to be face-to-face. And here we're going to have world-famous Joel Krooswick. He's going to be faced in the Washington, D.C. area. So if you have a question about applications for GitLab or maybe agentic AI, you're going to be available here in June, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll be around quite a bit, especially June 10th and 11th. That week, we've got overlapping Gartner Security Conference and AWS running at the DC Summit, both of them right there locally. And I will be speaking at each one day at AWS and then the second day at Gartner. So the 10th and the 11th, if you're around, stop by and say hi.
Yeah. And what I will do is you can go to federaltechpodcast.com and search GitLab, and I will put links to both appearances in the show notes. And then, if you're walking your dog and you don't want to write these things down, just, everyone knows AWS, everyone knows Gartner. They're going to be the DC area. And so if you have questions of a more sensitive nature, or you can grab Joel by the tie and say, hey, come here. Okay, give me a use case. Well, I'll ask you right here. I can't grab you on Zoom here, but give me a use case of maybe how GitLab has done transformation for a federal agency.
Well, and for the record, I probably will have ties on those days.
Oh, that'll be impressive.
Yeah. I think there's so many stories about what modernization and transformation look like right now, because there's so many different areas of change. But one of the things that AI is doing for us that I think is really important is something we've touched on a little bit, and that is the code refactoring. If you want to transform and modernize things, leveraging AI to do code refactoring, a year ago, we would have talked about this and said, what a cool thing. It can take some of these COBOL apps and start changing them, but it was a very, very iterative process. Small chunks of code, no contextual awareness of what's going on around it. We're really involved. Agents are changing that. Agents can talk to each other. They have an awareness of other things that are going on. The awareness of code generation engines is broader now. It can look across multiple code bases and say, well, what are we going to do with this, right? All of those things come together to allow us to truly refactor some of these large monolithic applications in ways that just weren't possible, even as we were starting to talk about it a year ago. We've come so far so fast. And so I think some of those things are opening doors that are modernizing government agencies at a rapid rate. And of course, there's stories starting to emerge of groups that are starting to dabble in this, whether it's pilots or some successful programs that are just starting to be introduced. So we're watching for more of that as we go.
There's a podcast in town called Feds at the Edge, and I was listening to an interview, and the edge they're talking about is the battlefield. And there was a woman speaker, and she said, you use the word context. Well, when you're in a battlefield, there's a lot of context going on, isn't there? You really have to be aware of your contextual environment. Some people call it situational awareness. And I see that in satellite technology. I see it in battlefield technology. But Joel, you're bringing the word, contextual awareness to a federal agency, because all of a sudden they do have hybrid cloud, they have private cloud, they have legacy systems, they have compliance, they have reduced staff. And so this is reduced staff. There's an issue we could talk about too, and how it can help an agency that has a reduced staff situation. So, boy, this word contextual is getting thrown about a lot.
Yeah, and I think it's something we have to be very aware of, because while it's a very big positive from the output perspective, what it can do for us, there's very large inherent risk as well. This is one of those parts where when you think about it, it's not a small part at all. It's a very large strategic implementation, because as agents roll out, they need to talk to each other. Where do they live? Now, you just mentioned at least 3 environments as you brought this up.
Yeah.
So I've got a cloud. I've got something riding over here, and I'm out on the edge. How are these agents talking to each other? Where do they live? What do they know? And what if someone can get into just one area? Can they compromise everything? So securing these agents, securing our communication, making sure they have the correct communication protocols around them is really, really important. So as we hear, hey, I'm rolling out agents and I've got model context protocol and I'm going to pop all these things out, the more excited people get about it, the more I'm cautioning them to be careful with the security protocols as you roll it out. Make sure these things can't talk further than they should. Make sure that no one can talk to them that shouldn't be. Keep your role-based permissions, your zero trust in check as you do this exercise.
I guess in a maturation, when they first started to have cars, they didn't have air conditioning. Then they had automatic transmissions, air conditioning, crop top, the whole thing. And I see with artificial intelligence, things are maturing as well. And so we have a maturation process where people looking at LLM and they're taking a look at it and making sure it's secure and make sure everything in there is not, because that's an attack vector. And so I would imagine that pre-written code could be viewed as an attack vector for a malicious actor. And how do you audit something like that? How do you trace something like that? I mean, it gets to the point where GitLab can say, oh, we can give you some assurances to that regard. I mean, I can see LLMs now as, hey, it's a new kid on the block. Let's go after him.
Well, if we learned anything from the DeepSeek exercises, we learned that there's inherent risk in which models you adopt, right?
Boy.
And how you adopt them. Because it's one thing if it's just being used out on the web, it's another if you're hosting it yourself in a private data center. So there's a lot of different questions around which models do I use? What do I use them for? Which ones are best for me? And is there inherent risk in that? And so I think when I look at what GitLab does from a transparency perspective, it's important, regardless of who you work with, what AI engines, what LLMs you use, make sure you know, if you're working with a third party, who they're interacting with and what models and engines they're using, because there has to be transparency there, or you inherently are adopting risk. And so I think that's one of the things that we do really well at GitLab. There's an AI transparency center where we just say, this is everything we use. Oh, by the way, each time we do an upgrade, we recheck all this stuff for you, and we don't learn from your data, right? So those kind of statements need to be out there for you, because otherwise, who knows what you're contributing to?
There's a marketing guy I follow in Los Angeles named Eric Sue, and he had a great quote this morning. This applies to many different marketing, I'm sure, so many different fields. But what he said is the game is changing. What was safe is now shaky. And so maybe the LLM from 6 months ago was safe. And I see people, human beings who they are, they may jump into Agentic AI and start putting things together. And did you get that approved? Rather ask for forgiveness than approval. Now, GitLab may say, okay, you can't even start unless you start from a solid base. So things are shaky and changing, and people have to be more wary.
Yeah, there's a lot more capabilities out there that are easier for us to put together. And I think that's a big deal, right? Because those of us who may not really know what we're doing, myself included, right? I think I'm going to spin up one of these MCP servers I've been hearing so much about. Well, I maybe that key is not in the right place and somebody else can get to it. And now I've compromised a whole lot of my system. And I think we need to watch for those moments really carefully right now.
When I first met you, we talked about DevSecOps. And I think this is part and parcel of the whole equation here. But I would imagine at the next DevSecOps, you have these all day long events, there's going to be half the speakers talking about secure code. I mean, this has to be there because if it's easy for little John Gilroy to put together something, it's going to be easy for a malicious actor in a country A to do the same thing. And so, wow, it's like spy versus spy. It's just accelerating every day.
And oddly enough, we're now using the lingo for it, right? For spy versus spy. It's now agent versus agent.
Right.
Because as we're spinning up agents, absolutely, the attacks are coming faster. We're seeing things where if you go back 5 years, you had 60 days to fix something that was an emergent vulnerability. You now have as little as 12 hours. The first 12 hours, we're seeing as much as a quarter of vulnerabilities attempted to be exploited because somebody spins up an agent maliciously. And what that means is no longer is somebody at a terminal trying to get into your system. They spin up an agent that goes everywhere at once trying to exploit that vulnerability. This is a new threatscape, right? And so if we don't have the equivalent technology working for us, that's going to become a problem for us real quickly.
Now's the time in the program where I scare the youngsters. Years ago, youngsters, virus would be updated with floppy disks in the U.S. mail. And so if you had an emergent threat, someone in Los Angeles would put a floppy disk in the U.S. mail to you. Maybe 3 weeks later, you'd get it in, and if you remembered, you'd update your antivirus signature. Is anyone going to believe that, Joel? That's going to think like I'm a drug-induced stupor or something, huh? But that's how they now the emergence. Now it's like you're on the clock, buddy.
Yeah, it is remarkably different. And as somebody who used to send a couple of bucks through the mail to get some kind of a game disc sent to me, I know what you're saying. I mean, I was young enough and naive enough to send cash through the mail to get those things. So, I mean, let's put this in perspective. But yeah, what a change, right? And I saw something about this the other day, just the speed of change. If you think about it, it was about 60 years from the Wright brothers experimenting with an airplane to where the Concorde was up in the air. 60 years, dramatic change in technologies. Compress that substantially now for what's happening with AI, right? We are changing at a pace I've not seen in my career, and I've lived through one or two changes, maybe advent of public internet and cell phones and some of those kind of things that really affected my career. There's nothing been at this pace. And so what we're seeing now is those security protocols got to be placed around things as we go. But at the same time, the world's wide open for change, and it's wide open to what's coming next. And the volumes of code and the volumes of substantial improvements in security and offerings and customer experience and all those things that we have hoped for are now on the table.
My wife and I have friends in a little town we live in, and their daughter just graduated, and she got admitted to Penn State, and she's going to be studying cybersecurity. And we were talking to her, and I said, well, Miss X, what's it going to be like in 4 years? Can Joel put together a curriculum for today? And Joel, give me the curriculum in cybersecurity 4 years from now. Can you print that out for the university? I mean, it's just a matter of going to conferences, listening, keeping in touch, finding out what's new. What's the use case? Well, Joel, here it is, June 11th here in suburban Maryland. What's new in the last week? It's forcing the communications. It's like what is it? A fire hose now.
Oh yeah, it's a fire hose, but it's also a mismatch, right? How is it possible for a university today to fully keep up with the things that we're trying to keep up with? I read for nearly 2 hours a day right now, trying to keep up. I was used to having an hour a day just trying to keep up. I'm at 2 now. And it's something that's changing rapidly enough that my son, he's on a 4-year degree, but he got it down to 2.5. He's cranked everything together. He's rushed himself through, came in with credits. I'm super proud of him. But he's also going this direction, right? He's in information security. How do I advise him right now? I don't even quite know. I'm introducing him to some technologies and some areas that I think he can focus. But the reality is, he said, well, maybe I'll be a coder. I said, well, by the time you get out, I don't know what coding exactly looks like, but I do know that you're going to have to focus on specific parts of coding. You're going to have to develop the innovative, the CX, the parts that we haven't gotten to yet, because AI gives us what it knows. We are now, as humans, providing what we don't know. And John, I'll tell you, this is the one thing I don't think you'll hear from anybody else. My concern for us going forward is we are really focused on the challenge parts, right? We're really focused on what AI is bringing us, and it's going to allow us to do these difficult things. We, as humans, the intensity level of it's going to require us to take those best practices. You know how you're supposed to take an hour and then step away from your desk for 5 minutes? If you don't do that going forward, it's going to start catching us more quickly. And I think the rhythm of our work is going to have to start changing as the intensity of it, or the challenge or the difficulty of it, rises. It's going to be rewarding. It's really going to be something that drives satisfaction in our work. But we're going to have to be a little bit careful with the smoke coming off our brains potentially if we continue to compact and take off all those kind of mindless tasks, quote unquote, or the repetitive tasks that we're used to having as our buffers. And so I'm watching it from that perspective. The change to workflows is going to be a change in our work habits as well.
We start off this conversation with agentic AI and all kinds of tech terms, and we're ending it with cultural terms. So look into the future, gaze into the future, and not give me a syllabus for Penn State 5 years from now, 4 years from now. is this, it goes back to the human being. It's like, hey, grab Joel at this event, talk to him face to face. Is the killer app going to be face to face? Is the killer app going to be, because these are tools, now we're going to figure out exactly what that means and how it interacts with humans. So is cultural change the key to getting work done in the next 5 years?
I'll say this. If technology ignores culture, it does so at its own peril, right? We are the culture. We are the substance of work. We are what make the world go round. AI is not going to just simply replace that. It can't. We've heard for years, the automation is going to supplant work. Well, it augmented it. Maybe it replaced some work. But the reality is, at the end of the day, humans take on more value in the work that they're doing. We're seeing that again now. The value of what we provide is going to shift. And so if you think about it today, when you call into a customer support line and you get dial 1, dial 2, press 3 for this, I don't believe any of us is happier when we get to that menu. Oh. And I think that continues. We still want to be communicating with each other. And at some point, AI runs out of speed based on what it knows for a problem it hasn't encountered. And we need that person. So no matter what the environment is where that occurs, it occurs. And I think those limitations, as they exist, are the things that are going to help us maintain and enhance our culture. It's just another cultural shift.
Yeah. We got to end our conversation. We're running out of time. But if you want more information about GitLab, GITLAB.com, all kinds of stuff there. And if you want to grab Joel by the cultural tie or the theoretical tie, he'll be at the AWS Public Summit and at the Gartner event, both in the Washington, D.C. area. So, Joel, this has been a lot of fun. I hope we can do it again soon. And pick a topic that I can't, in 6 months, it'll be, well, I don't know. We'll have to worry about the week before the interview, huh?
Yeah, I guess we will. Yeah, it'll be a different time again.
Yeah. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. My guest is Joel Krooswick, Federal CTO of GitLab. Thanks, Joel.
Thanks, John.